What is this awesome detail I just added to the back of my skirt? Well, it's a pleated skirt vent. Isn't it cool? And I think the coolest thing about this is that you can add it to an existing skirt. So go grab one of those skirts in your wardrobe and let's add a pleated vent to it. Today, I'm going to be teaching you how to add a pleated vent to any skirt that you have. And using this method, you can add a single pleat, a double pleat, or a triple pleat. More on how to do that later in the video though. So let's get going. If you're sewing along with me, grab a skirt that you want to add that pleat to. And you don't have to just add this to the back of a skirt. You could add it to the side of a shirt, maybe the bottom of a pair of pants. The options are endless. You can get creative and do this to just about any seam you'd like. So our first step is going to be seam ripping open the seam we want to get that fabric in. So if we want to get all these fabulous pleats in the seam, we need to seam rip it open. Now you can make this any length you would like. I made this one about 5.5 inches long. You're probably wondering, how long should I make my pleated vent? Well, try on your skirt and see how long you would like to make it. Something to take into consideration is your skirt tight when you sit down? Is it pulling across the bottom of your legs or your thighs? If you have a tight pencil skirt, it might be doing this. So you might want to come up that high with your vent so that way when you sit down, it's comfortable and not pulling. So adding these pleated vents is a great way to create room and space in your skirt. I'm going to be adding the vent to my center back seam here, and I'm coming up 6 inches. So I'm putting a mark 6 inches up from the hem. So I know I need to seam rip all of this open. And since we have a hem already on our skirt because it's pre-made, we need to open up the hem as well a few inches on each side of the seam. So I'm going to seam rip that open and then we'll move on to the next step. And just like that, we have the back of the skirt open. Now that we have that seam opened up, it's time to start construction. We are going to measure out the pleated vent on some additional fabric and then we get to sew it in, which means we need to measure out some fabric. And today I'm going to be using this pink cotton for my vent. So to figure out how much fabric you need to figure out how wide do you want your pleat and how many of them do you want. So right here I have 3 pleats and I have them 2 inches wide. So I need 12 inches of fabric for just one side of my skirt. So to create this triple pleat here on the back, I need 24 inches of fabric for the pleats, plus an extra ½ inch to sew onto the skirt. So I'm gonna need 25 inches of fabric in length. That extra 1 inch is seam allowance so that way we can sew the pleated vent to our skirt. Your seam allowance could be different on your skirt, so just measure the seam allowance on your pattern and then ×2 and add that to the length of your vent. Now that we have the width figured out, we need to figure out the length. So I left a 6-inch opening for my vent because I would like it to be 6 inches, but we have to take into consideration seam allowance for the top. I'm giving mine a ½ inch, and seam allowance for the bottom. Mine is a 1/4 inch rolled hem, so I need to leave a ½ inch at the bottom, which is going to give me a total of 7 inches in length. But yours could be different. Check out the seam allowance for your hem and decide how much you'd like to leave at the top and add that to the length of your vent. So in total, mine is gonna be 7 inches tall and 25 inches long. Let's cut it out and then we're gonna get into some really interesting stuff. So I have my fabric cut out and I finished the edges and I'm ready to mark it up. Grab your ruler and your chalk and I'm gonna show you how to mark out these pleats and measure them. First thing you wanna do is mark the center of your piece of fabric. And I'm going to draw a line right down center. Now that we have our center line marked, we're going to draw out our pleats. So I'm going to be marking out every 2 inches so that way I know exactly where to iron and I know exactly where my pleats are going to fold. Your measurement could be different. So if your pleats are only going to be 1 inch wide, you're going to mark out every inch. Since mine are 2, I'm going to be marking out every 2. So the first line is going to be the underneath of the pleat, and then this is where it folds back on itself, and then the next 2 inches is going to be the top of the pleat. And you're going to keep doing this for however many pleats you would like. If you just wanted 1 pleat, then you'd be done with one side. So for every pleat, you're going to need 2 of these sections. So this is going to be my first pleat, so I'm going to put a 1 on it. Now I'm going to continue on and draw out my second pleat. So I have 2 sections I'm marking out for my second pleat. So this is number 2, and then I'm going to have 2 sections for my third pleat. And then at the end, you should have fabric left over for your seam allowance. Now let's do the exact same thing to the other side. They're both the same length, so it should end up looking just the same. Now we have pleat 1, 2, and 3 for both sides. And as you can see, this would be the process you would follow whether you want 1, 2, 3, or more pleats. The next step is really exciting because we are going to see these pleats come to life. They're going to form right on top of each other. And we're going to do this using the iron. Let me show you how. If you're enjoying this video, make sure you like and subscribe to Sew Anastasia. It really helps out the channel a lot. If you're looking to improve your sewing skills with online courses, make sure you check out my online sewing school. There will be a link for that down below in the description. Now back to those pleats. The first thing you need to be aware of is where is your center line. So my center line is right here. Now we're going to take the line, which is the outside of the one, and we are going to fold it up to the center line. And make sure you're creasing exactly where your chalk line is, because we need this to turn out nice and precise. So once you have that lined up there, I want you to press it nice and flat. Uh-oh, we got water. So we have one pleat finished. So if you're doing just one, it's gonna look like that. But I'm gonna move on to pleat number 2. So now I'm gonna take the outside line of the 2s and I'm going to crease it upwards, and we're going to place it right on top of number 1. So number 1 is below number 2. We're gonna steam that. And now we have 2 pleats. So if you're doing 2, then you would be done ironing that side with 2. Since I have 3, I'm going to be taking my 3rd pleat, and I'm basically taking the outside line, which would be where my seam allowance is, to attach it. And we are going to fold that down right on top. And now we're going to press that. So my seam allowance to sew to the skirt is going to be right here. And now I have 1, 2, and 3 pleats right there. Now we're gonna do the same thing to the other side, and I'm just gonna move those pleats out of the way. Now do the same thing to the other side, and let's start out with the first pleat. So now we have our stacks of pleats and our seam allowances on the sides. Now is the big moment. I'm going to show you how to attach it to the skirt and make it look like it's always been there. The first thing we need to sew is reinforcing where we stopped seam ripping, because if we were just to sew this in and we went to sit down, this whole seam would rip open because there's no reinforcement or back stitch there. So we're just going to go back where we left off, and we're just going to back stitch a few times and make that nice and strong. So we're just adding a few back stitches right where we left off seam ripping at the top. Now it'll be nice and secure. Now that we've reinforced that back seam so it's nice and secure, when you bend over, it is time to put in the package of pleats. So I've ironed open my seam allowances at the hem and on the center back here. So they're all ready to be sewn to the pleats. So when we do this, you want to take it and you're going to place it face down. So that way it looks like a giant box pleat on the inside. And now what we need to do is fold it back, and we're going to take this edge here and we're going to sew it to the back of the skirt. And make sure your fabric is going all the way down to the hem, because when we re-hem it later, we need to also hem the pleat. I'm gonna pin this up starting at the hem, just ending at the top of the pleat here that we're creating for the back for my triple pleat. So we're just all the way up here into the seam allowance. It is gonna go beyond the spot of your back stitch because we've got that extra ½ inch up here. And then we're gonna take it and we're gonna fold it over, and we're gonna do the same thing to the other side. And it's okay if this all comes unpleated right now, totally fine. You want it to, so it's easier to sew. Again, just starting at the bottom and lining it up. And right now, it should look like that. You've got it pinned at one side, you've got it pinned on the other, and you've got your giant thing of pleats here. So now we're gonna sew up both sides with whatever seam allowance it is your project has. Mine is a 1/2 inch, so I'm doing a 1/2 inch here, then I'm flipping it over, and I'm going to do a 1/2 inch seam right here. Now I'm sewing up the sides of the pleats to the skirt. Back stitch and cut. Now I'm going to do the same thing to the other side. So you can see I have the 2 seams here sewn together for the sides of that vent. Right now it's looking pretty weird. So let me show you how to fold and pleat that back up and sew it down so that way it stays permanently pleated when you're wearing it. Right now, you're gonna fold it like you had it folded before and you already have those creases there from ironing it. So just make sure you fold them back on top of themselves and keep them nice and flat. I have one side folded. I'm going to put a few pins in it so that way it doesn't move around on me. And now I'm going to do the other side, starting from the bottom. Depending on the fabric you're using, you might need to maneuver this around a little to get it to lay flat for you. Put a few more pins in there. Okay, so now you can see those pleats are coming together. And to make sure this stays together while we're wearing it, I'm going to sew through all of these layers and through the skirt, through just the back layer. So that way it's permanently attached at the top of the pleat here. Now we're sewing the top of that pleat down. Make sure you backstitch. You are going over a lot of layers, so try and keep them all nice and flat. Backstitch when you get to the end and cut. Okay, we only have one more step. All we need to do is hem the bottom. I'm gonna teach you how to roll hem the bottom of the skirt with the pleat. So we're gonna start where we left off, where we were seam ripping. And my rolled hem here is 1/4 and 1/4. So we're gonna fold it up 1/4, and then we're gonna fold it up another 1/4, and it should blend in right where we left off. And then we are going to continue doing this all the way around the fullness of the pleat, no matter how big your pleat is, 1/4 and 1/4. And then we're edge stitching it down at the fold until we get all the way over to the other side. And then we are going to be ending in the skirt fabric, just making sure it's 1/4 and 1/4, and it's gonna blend right in. Don't forget to back stitch when you start, and start in the existing stitches that are already there. So that way your hem doesn't fall apart. When you get to your seam that's connecting the pleats, make sure you have your seam pressed open. Just keep roll hemming all the way around. When you get to the end, make sure you overlap the stitches where you were seam ripping, back stitch, and cut. We are all done. Let's take a look at our amazing pleated vent. So the back of the skirt just looks like it has a normal seam until you start walking, and then you get these amazing folds of fabric that open up. These little hidden design details really elevate your look. They elevate the design. They just add a little something extra that makes your garment nicer to wear and nicer to look at. And it's more personal because of course you did it, and it's also gonna fit better and be more comfortable to walk in. So you can see we have all of our numbered pleats inside, and the way we iron them, they all fold beautiful on top of each other. And then on the inside, we have that stitch holding down this little package of pleats here. And then we've hemmed it all. So we've hemmed it just the way we found it with that rolled hem. And then as a little added bonus, I did put a little edge stitch here, sewing the lining basically of this pleat to the outside just to keep it nice and crisp at this edge. You don't have to do that step, but I thought it was a nice little touch. Thank you so much for watching Sewing Anastasia today. I hope you enjoyed learning how to create the pleated vent for any seam really, but it looks great at the center back of a skirt. Let me know what other skirt modifications you would like to see. Leave them down below in the comments. I'd also love to know, where are you going to put a pleated vent? Leave it down below in the comments so you can inspire everyone else. If you enjoyed the video today, give it a thumbs up, give it some applause, and well, let me know what you think about this pleated vent. And don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell so you know when the new videos come out. And if you're already a subscriber, thank you so much for watching today. These videos are for you. And don't forget to follow me on Instagram, Facebook, and all the socials so that way we can stay connected and creative together. And join that Pattern of the Month Club and the virtual sewing circle with me. And if you want to improve those sewing skills, make sure you check out my online sewing classes or in person here in Chicago in my design studio. Links for both of those are going to be down below in the description. Thanks so much for watching. Bye.